question. As long as countries trade in the currency of nuclear weapons as the currency of power, others will want them, others will get them. As long as they exist, they inevitably will be used. One terrorist attack on any one city will close down the global economy. Trading will stop. Ports will close down. Stock exchanges will close down. Right now, half of the human family lives in unnecessary, unspeakable poverty. That number would certainly be magnified enormously. But the militaries of the world would remain. And in the chaos that would ensue, I don't believe people would turn toward the kind of utopian loving vision that we know we need to move toward, but out of fear, they would build more walls between them, and militaries would not be suffering from poverty. Militaries won't be suffering from starvation. We are in a race against time to make sure that a terrorist does not blow up a harbor. But we're also in a race against time from the existential threat of nuclear weapons, not just the explicit threats of having them and actually threatening to use them, as Jody Williams was talking about in 1991. James Baker, Dan Quayle, John Majors, President Bush explicitly threatened to use them. In North Korea, as often, all options are on the table. Richard Nixon in 1969 intentionally put the weapons on the highest state of alert to try and get the North Koreans to do what he wanted. If I put a gun to your head and tell you to tie your shoes, I don't have to pull the trigger. That's a use. And the daily deployment, the training, the spiritual dehumanization of the other is a use. But think of the spiritual aspect, the dehumanization in the hearts. I mean, during the Cold War, maybe it made some sense, but goodness gracious, I bought gas from a Russian concession last week in my Japanese car. The money, my computer didn't work. I was on the phone with a young lady from Bangalore. The money was based on a loan from China. My suit was made in Canada, my shirt in Malaysia. What on earth are we doing existentially threatening each other this way? And dehumanizing the other. And who exactly is the other? It's so dangerous. General Lee Butler, who was in charge of the strategic nuclear forces in the 1990s, the day-to-day responsibility of targeting and readiness of the entire U.S. nuclear arsenal, said, "It's more chilling than anybody can possibly imagine. Missiles that blew up in their silos ejected their nuclear warheads outside of the confines of the silo. B-52 aircraft colliding with tankers and scattered nuclear weapons across the coast into the offshore seas of Spain. A B-52 bomber with nuclear weapons aboard that crashed in North Carolina, and on investigation it was discovered that on one of those weapons, 6 of 7 of the safety devices that prevent a nuclear explosion had failed as a result of the crash. There are dozens of such incidents. Nuclear missile-laden submarines that experience catastrophic accidents lying at the bottom of the ocean. Then, I know of communication satellite launches that have been mistaken for nuclear missiles. A demonstration tape was accidentally placed in one of the computers in Cheyenne Mountain, and the world hung in a 15-minute balance of terror. In 1980, the U.S. command post indicated a full-scale Soviet attack, and the launch crews for Minuteman missiles were given preliminary launch warnings. A computer chip had malfunctioned. September 26, 1983, the Soviet Union's launch detection satellites reported that U.S. Minuteman intercontinental missiles had been launched. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov saved the world because he didn't pass on the information up the chain of command. And I had an interview with him, and he said, the reason I didn't was God didn't want the world to end. Ronald Reagan said it so clearly. 6 minutes to decide how to respond to a blip on a radar scope and decide whether to unleash Armageddon. How could anyone apply reason in a situation like that? The Cuban Missile Crisis gave us 13 days. It's about 300 seconds between a launch in Pakistan to Delhi. That's not enough time for somebody to evaluate whether a computer has been hacked, whether a computer chip is making a mistake. And we talk about terror. The existential reality of nuclear weapons, in my opinion, is a continual state of modernity's terror. It is a collective threat. We have forgotten the why of our humanity and become preoccupied with the how. We pursue weapons. The more you perfect them, the less security you obtain. It's like pursuing medicine without healing, or law without justice, or art without beauty. It's just the how without a reason. But the reason is simple. Fear, the division in the heart, the ability to manipulate power is what drives it. It's clearly immoral. It's clearly a waste of huge amounts of intellectual and economic resources. And I will say now, as an international lawyer, it is unambiguously illegal. The nations of the world this year at the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty said that international humanitarian law must apply to nuclear weapons. And international humanitarian law is what we are protecting. The weapons are designed to protect our civilized values. And what does that law say? It says that weapons must be able to discriminate between civilians and combatants. Weapons must not inflict unnecessary suffering. Weapons must not affect neutral third parties. Weapons must only be used for a specific military purpose and no more. The U.S. Air Force training manual on targeting asked military officers to answer these questions when they put a target. Is this target a valid military objective? Will the use of a particular weapon cause unnecessary suffering? They go through the whole list of it for normal weapons, but not nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons really are in a category unto themselves. So the argument that it's not time for a nuclear weapons convention is the political climate is not right. I say, put the stake in the ground. We have to get there. Policies that ripen getting to a nuclear weapons convention, those are good policies. Policies that move us away are bad policies. What are good? The START Treaty, the Test Ban Treaty, stopping the weaponization of space. What are bad? Weaponizing space, modernizing the arsenals. But at the end of the day, every single person has a way of moving toward that peaceful world, whether it's beginning in our hearts and how we treat our fellow man, or the country of Japan saying, we know what nuclear weapons really do. We know better than anybody. And we don't want to be relying on our security under the nuclear umbrella. Because when people in the United States go to the Congress and say, change the policies, we are told if we make progress on disarmament, Japan could become a nuclear weapons state. That's what we're told. So the Japanese people and all the other 30 countries under the nuclear umbrella are part of the nuclear weapon states. And they have to change. Each of us has to change. Each of us will change. We'll be different tomorrow. Our choice is which direction are we going to go. So, sir, I say nuclear terrorism is a daily activity, and the change is a daily activity, and the choice is in our hands. May God make us the choice makers for peace. Thank you.